Hey everybody, Pure Billionaire here. Today's Monday, January 6, 2025. Huge news. Let's get to business. The Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, has officially resigned today, and he says they could have a new leader as early as March 2025. Now, Trudeau has been under extreme scrutiny over the past 4 to 6 years, and there's going to be some instability in the Canadian market and potentially the global market. So I want to especially highlight what this might mean for gold and silver and bullion investors. But for context, Canada and Trudeau's legacy over the past 10 years has been hit pretty hard with rising inflation, so in some ways even much, much worse than the United States. Trade tensions with the United States, especially with Donald Trump, and a very, very bad national debt issue. Just like the United States, just like many other developed countries in the world, they don't know how to handle their debt. But these factors didn't just impact everyday Canadians. If you ask Canadians, there's been so many issues for them since the beginning of coronavirus. But the market of precious metals. Okay, we're going to talk about why Canada is such a pivotal role, especially in the mining of gold in the context of the world. So gold and silver, as we know, are safe haven assets in times of uncertainty and instability, like this very example. So Canada is actually a powerhouse in the gold bullion industry. Canada is the fourth highest gold producing nation in the world. The United States is actually fifth. Even though we hold the most gold, we do not produce the most gold. Actually, China and Russia, for example, are ahead of us in producing. So when this leadership shakeup happens, okay, it raises questions about what these industries look like in the future, because who's leading the country determines how aggressive they are in mining it and producing it. So we should pay attention to that in the coming months and years. But looking ahead, we don't know actually if the leader of Canada will be a more liberal or a more conservative leader. So if the Conservative Party gains power, we might see some more fiscal conservatism, which could stabilize the mining and the resource exports. But before we get there, there's likely to be, like we said, some instability and uncertainty as people are not exactly surprised, but unsure of what holds next and for the leadership of that country. Are people going to flock more to silver and gold, especially as the Canadian dollar continues to weaken with inflation that is hitting much harder than even the United States today? Will we see a temporary price bump? So, speaking of the Canadian dollar, it's long been tied to Canada's resource exports. So in times of political transition, currencies often face some volatility. So we may expect that with the Canadian dollar in 2025. And if the Canadian dollar continues to weaken, this could make gold and silver much more attractive to Canadian bullion investors. And I'm wondering, if you're a listener from Canada, do people in your family, in your community, on the news, in your social media, your friend groups, whatever, are people talking about safe haven assets more and more? If you start to notice that, it's starting to get into the global psyche or the community psyche that you're in, that may be a sign of where the general population is heading in terms of mindset towards safety for themselves and their community and family. All right, so just imagine for a second if this event were to happen in the United States, if our Joe Biden or Donald Trump says that they were going to resign. The uncertainty that this would create would probably be tenfold. And having a hedge and protection against these things, which may be unpredictable at times, is like wearing a seatbelt in a car. You don't want the car to crash or get in a wreck or get in a fender bender. I don't know what I would classify Justin Trudeau as resigning as. It's a little more than a fender bender, but it's not exactly a gigantic crash, so to speak. But when these events happen, they're far and few in between. They may be happening more and more often. In that car of financial stability, you want to have your seatbelt on for these uncertain events. And having your gold, silver, your bullion, this is your metaphorical seatbelt in uncertain times, okay? So globally, this development might amplify concerns about the geopolitical and economic risks that are already happening. So for example, central banks have been buying gold at record levels, especially, keep this in mind, the BRICS countries, okay? The BRICS countries, B-R-I-C-S, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America. This term's been around for, I believe, almost about 15 years. So, as inflation remains a persistent issue, the debt levels, like we were talking about, the federal debt for these countries, the debt of the country as a whole is climbing rapidly and uncontrollably. In many situations, the debt is at least 100% more than the entire country's GDP. So the output of the whole country, if they were to somehow sell it or quantify that into a lump sum, it would not even be able to pay off the debt. That is a scary situation to be in. So, for example, today, the United States debt tracker is just at about, it's going to hit $36.2 trillion. And that's, so going back to the fiscal year, which actually started October 1st, 2024, the United States has almost gone $1 trillion in deficit. Okay, so like we said, it's accelerating, it's amplifying. So it doesn't feel like this inflation situation is going to get any better, at least in the short term. So going back to Trudeau, so if you're a Canadian citizen or investor, this moment really deserves some of your attention. Whether you're holding physical gold, silver, platinum, whether you're into the mining stocks, whatever you do, this could be a potential turning point in price and safe haven asset placement for you. So it's not just about the announcement, but it's about the ripple effects and what's going to happen in the Canadian economy and what's going to spread to the other economies throughout the rest of the year and so on. So I want to ask you, what do you think is next? Does this resignation and the instability in Canada, and even we've seen some in Europe, will this tick bullion prices higher? Will gold and silver be looked more as a safe haven asset? Is the appeal growing in the world day by day? These are the questions I'm going to be thinking about over the next coming months, and keep an eye on the news. So let me know your thoughts, your comments below. How do you see this event impacting the bullion market? All right. And as always, if this is helpful, please like, subscribe, follow along, and we'll keep breaking down the news and how it affects us. Have a great day.